Hello boys and girls, I'm back with another math video. So we're going to be looking at comparing and ordering fractions. There's 4 different pages we're going to work on today, and I want to give you some hints and some tips on how to navigate and work through these pages. So this one's on page 375. It's called Fractions and Containers. And what you have to do is there are a list of fractions here, and then there's a list of containers here, and each container has a landmark or a description of which fractions belong in them. So what you want to do as you work with each fraction, you want to cross out each fraction as you use it. 3/6 has been done for you. And there are 5 fractions for each container. So each container has to have 5 fractions. Now the categories are less than 1/2, 1/2, between 1/2 and 1 whole, and more than 1 whole. So here's some tips that might help you. We learned when we compare fractions that we can use landmarks, we can use operations, and we can use pictures. So anything that's less than 1/2, the top number will be less than half of the bottom number. So here's an example. Let's look at 1/4. All right, 1/4, this one right here. If I look at the bottom number, and that's 4, half of 4 is 2. Well, 1/4 is less than that. So that would be in the less than 1/2 category. So I would cross that out. Okay. Now 1/2, there are 4 other fractions that are equal to 1/2. And the trick for this one is the top number has to be half of the bottom number. So 3 is half of 6. What other fractions can I find that's like that? Well, let's see. If I scan through, I find 2/4. What's half of 4? 2. So this is equal to 1/2. So I can use that and cross that out and put that in here. So now I have 2 fractions here. I need 3 more. So you're going to find the other 3. Now I'm going to skip this one and go to these 2, because these 2 I find are the easiest. The fractions that are 1 whole are very easy. The numerator is equal to the denominator. So the fraction has to have the same number on top and the same number on the bottom. So if I scan through, the first one that I find is 5/5. Notice that this top number is the same as the bottom number. So I would put that here. There are 4 other fractions just like that. And more than 1 whole, well, the numerator, the top number, has to be bigger than the denominator. Well, that's any fraction where the top number is bigger. Well, that's easy to find. Let's see if I can scan through. Oh, 5 halves, 5/2, or 5 halves. So that would also work. And this I would cross out and put that here. So there are 4 other fractions like that, and there are 4 other fractions like this. Now, between 1/2 and 1 whole, these are fractions that are bigger than 1/2, but less than 1 whole. So these are fractions that have a numerator that's smaller than the denominator, but more than half. So what would be an example of that? Well, if I scan through here, these are already used. And what about 1/5? Now 1/5, no, because half of 5 is 2.5. But 2/3 would work because half of 3 is 1.5. So 2 is bigger than that. And this is less than 1 because the top number is less than the bottom number. So I would use that. And that would go here. So there are 4 other fractions like that. So do the best you can with that. And now let's look at the next page that we're going to work on. This is on page 379. So for page 379, you're going to fill in the fractions. And it says fill in the box for each fraction so that it represents the amount stated for each box. The first fraction has been done for you. So all the fractions here have to be less than a half. So 3/8 is less than a half because 4/8 is equal to a half. So 3 is less than that. Okay, so now I'm missing a bottom number here. Well, what's half of, what would be, 3 would be half of 6. So I know 3/6 is equal to a half. But this has to be less than a half. So I have to make the bottom number bigger. So this could be 7 or 8 or 9. I can't use 8 because I've already used that. So let's use 3/7. Because half of 7 is 3.5, and that's less than half. All right, here I got to find a fraction that's less than, what's half of 5? Well, 2.5. So it has to be something that's less than 2.5. So see if you can figure that one out. All right, for these, you have to find fractions that are equal to a half. So this one's a little easy. What's half of 12? Well, I know 6 is half of 12, so that will go in the box. And then you do the same thing here. What denominator, if I cut it in half, would be 5? And what would be half of 4? So you're putting in missing numbers here to make these fractions equal to 1/2. And just like in the fractions of containers between 1/2 and 1, these have to be bigger than a half. So half of 2/4 would be equal to a half. So what would be bigger than 2/4? 2/3. How do I know that? Because thirds are bigger pieces. And it's less than 1, because if this was 2/2, it would be 1. All right, so let's see if you can find the rest for these. Equal to 1, that means the numerator is equal to the denominator. So the first one would be 3/3, or 3/3. So then these two, you can figure out what they might be. Okay, in between 1 and 1.5, these are fractions that are bigger than 1. So the numerator has to be bigger than the denominator. And between 1 and 1.5. So it can't be bigger than 1.5. So a trick that is useful is, you know that 8/8 is equal to 1. So what would be bigger than that? Well, 9/8 would be, because it's 1 more eighth, and it's between 1 and 1.5. Same thing here. You know that 6/6 would equal to 1. So how do I make this fraction bigger than 1? The denominator would have to be smaller. Same thing here. So think about how you would work these out. And for here, more than 1.5, try to find fractions that are equal to 2. The 2 wholes. So I know that 5 or larger. So 5/5 is equal to 1. So if I made this fraction 5/2, that would be 2 1/2. Because let's think about how that would work. You know, 2/2 plus 2/2 plus 1/2 equals 5/2. So that's 1 whole plus 1 whole plus a half. So that would work. The denominator would work there. And then for thirds, you just think, well, how many thirds make 1? Well, 3/3 is equal to 1. So how many thirds would make 2? Well, that would be 3/3 plus 3/3, which is 6/3. 6/3. And that would be equal to 2 wholes. So that would work here. So try to see if you can solve the last one. Okay. So now let's go to page 381. And it says, make your move. The fractions on each clothesline are out of order. Show how to fix the order with just one move. So they did the first one for you. They moved the 3/8 here. And they do that because I need to move 3/8. 1/4 is the same as 2/8. And 1/2 is the same as 4/8. So 3/8 should go between them. So the new order would be 1/6. That's the smallest. Then 1/4. Then 3/8. Then 1/2. Then 4/3. So let's look at the order here. All right. Well, bigger the denominator, the smaller the piece. So this is bigger than that. This is bigger than that. Then you have 2/3. 2/3 is bigger than 1/4 because this is bigger than 1/2. Well, wait. 1/2 is smaller than 2/3. So this one would have to go in this spot. And I would say I need to move 1/2 because 1/2 is less than 2/3. So the new order would be 1/8, then 1/4, then 1/2, then 2/3, then 4/4. 4/4 is the biggest because it's equal to 1. So in the next three, something has to be moved, and I want you to give an explanation just like I did here. And then the final page, you're going to jump all the way to 409. And here you're just going to compare the fractions. And best way to do this is some people like to use operations. So if you set this up, you can do your cross multiplication. So you do 5 times 1 is 5, and you circle it. And 3 times 3 is 9, and you circle it. And then 3 times 5 is 15. So you know 5/15 is less than 9/15. So 1/3 is less than 3/5. You can also draw pictures as well. Or you can use landmarks. So here I have 5/6 and 2/3. So let's see if I want to draw pictures. I will draw 2 bars of the same size. Remember, the size of the whole matters. One I will cut into thirds. And the other one I will cut into 6 pieces. So 5/6 will be down here. And 2/3 would be here. Well, clearly 5/6 is larger or greater than 2/3. So I would draw the symbol like that. See that? And then this one is obvious. This is equal to 1/2, and this is less than 1/2, because 1/2 of 8 is 4. So 1/2 will be greater than 1/8. So you have those 3 strategies. You can use the operations, you can use landmarks, you can use pictures. You have notes on this as well. And solve these problems. Look at the video as often as you like. And good luck. Bye now.